Hello, this is the Captain Paxo, welcoming you back to Paxo's podcast on September 2018 now, episode 2. It's going to be a kind of similar thing as to what it was last time, where I talk a bit about Monster Hunter, a bit about Warframe, some other games that I've been playing, and just general things relating towards the channel. So, Project Kushala, that's the secret project that I've been working on for the past couple of months. It's very much still in progress, kind of chipping away at it bit by bit. It's kind of slowed down a little bit. I feel comfortable enough saying that it's a review of something at this point. So I've got a transcript of the thing that I'm reviewing, and I'm making notes on it. Just for future reference, say, for example, a character says something incredibly stupid, I'll make a note of it, like, this is stupid because of this, that, and the other, and then in the script, when I make the script, I will go into much further detail. The third part, or the third act of this thing that I'm reviewing is so infuriating that I'm honestly finding it quite difficult to get through, because it's one of those things where a long time ago I thought it was one of the best things on the planet, and then I look at it under a microscope and I start to see, like, oh, hang on a minute, if we think about this, how on earth does this character know about this? Or how on earth did this character not think about this? Or why did they think that this was gonna work? Or how did they get away with this? Or how come this character suddenly lose this ability when they had it in the first two acts? Like, what's going on there? And so it's been very frustrating. But I'm most of the way through that. I've only got maybe 20 pages left on the transcript of note making, and then I can actually start making a script, which is very exciting. So there'll be more on that in the future. That's all I've really got on it right now, unfortunately. So someone on the last podcast asked me for my thoughts on Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and I think I might make this hopefully a more regular thing on the podcast. If you have any topics you want me to discuss, or just questions in general, leave them in the comments below, and I will answer them in the comments briefly, because it's a month-long wait. I don't expect people to wait a month on a response, so I will reply to them in the comments at the time, and then I might make them a larger topic on the next podcast. I should mention this part that I'm doing right now, talking into the microphone, answering this question, this idea. This is being done post. This is done after the fact that I did the podcast, which I don't feel particularly great about, because it kind of defeats the point of a podcast. But what I started talking about during the original take of it was like, oh yeah, if you play like 1,000 hours of any game, you're gonna get burnt out of it if you don't take any breaks. And it kind of sent this message that I've been playing Dark Souls for 5 years non-stop, and that's not accurate at all. I've taken many breaks, some of them a year or so, and that's probably what I'm going through right now, is just a really long break from Dark Souls, and then I'll end up going back to it. So the Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, it seems pretty cool. I honestly haven't seen a lot on it. Pretty much all I know about it is that it's like this, I suppose, I'm not sure if he's a samurai or a ronin or something. A Japanese dude with a katana has like this medieval bionic arm that allows him to do some really cool stuff, which I find really interesting. The idea that you have this crazy bionic arm that you can upgrade with all this different equipment, and you can just dispense a gadget whenever you want from your arm, like a grappling hook or a flamethrower or an extra sword or a small shield or something like that. I find the idea of that fascinating. But I haven't seen a lot on it, because I have been getting a little bit burnt out on Dark Souls as a franchise, and as such, I kind of hope that Sekiro Shadows Die Twice does not have a Dark Souls-like combat system. I hope it's really different. Like, I hope it's kind of like Bloodborne, but even further away from Dark Souls than Bloodborne, because I really like Bloodborne's combat, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more with it, have certain button combinations to unlock secret moves or something like that. I don't know. But speaking of getting a bit burnt out on Dark Souls as a topic, what the real problem for me with Dark Souls is yes, I've been playing it for 5 years on and off, but I've just had so much of it. It's like I'm oversaturated with Dark Souls, because I've been playing since the original launch of it on the Xbox 360, and then there was the Artorias of the Abyss. Then I played Dark Souls 2, and then Scholar of the First Sin on PS4, Dark Souls 3, Ashes of Ariandel. I got the PC version of Prepare to Die, and then Dark Souls Remaster. Oh god. It just got way too much after a while. After a point, I'm just like, I'm out. I'm just Dark Souls out. I've played so much of it at this point. I need something different. And then I kind of moved towards Monster Hunter, which had the difficulty, but instead of having to deal with the mob enemies, which I wasn't finding very interesting to fight in Dark Souls anymore, I was more interested in the boss fights in Dark Souls and being challenged by that, fighting like Manus and Artorias. You can kind of see where I was starting to go with Monster Hunter, is like, you just get straight to the monster. You have to do a bit of resource grinding beforehand, but when you want to fight a monster, you load up the quest, you go to the monster, and you fight it. There's no bullshit. I mean, occasionally there's a fucking bulldrome or something in the zone that kicks your ass, or maybe there's just like a rogue royal Ludroth or something, and it's just like... But that's why you have dung bombs, right? But the point is like, I was wanting to be challenged by content, but I wanted to be challenged by a big bad, something that I could kind of one-on-one maybe and try and figure out its pattern, and something that's really genuinely threatening but isn't a mob, which was my biggest complaint about Dark Souls 2, is everything's a mob. There's mobs everywhere. Just, there's an archer on that roof, there's a guy throwing lightning from over there, and there's about 15 swordsmen running after you, and the door closed behind you. Good luck. Thanks, Dark Souls 2. Love you. And then Scholar of the First Sin just made it even worse. Getting disgruntled by Dark Souls aside, the attraction for Monster Hunter was that the combat was even deeper than it was in Dark Souls, because admittedly, Dark Souls is mostly one-button combat. You're only really using R1. Occasionally you use a modifier with it, with like sprinting or rolling or backstep or something like that. Sometimes you'll use an R2, but most of the time it's R1. If you're just running through the PvE, the campaign, so to speak, you're just using one button. Whereas Monster Hunter, you're using several buttons to pull off combinations or specific moves that will be able to give you an advantage facing certain monsters. Some moves give you iframes, like the backstep on the sword and shield. Some of them just add more mobility, like the fade step on the longsword. Some of them are just more powerful than others. There's a lot more depth to the combat in Monster Hunter than in Dark Souls, and at the time I was really looking for something that could give me that. So that's why I moved away from Dark Souls and more towards Monster Hunter, but also I was getting very frustrated with Dark Souls as a franchise, because I was watching it getting milked, for lack of a better term. I mean, Dark Souls has been in the process of being milked since Dark Souls 2, because Namco's like, ooh, Dark Souls made a lot of money, Artorias of the Abyss made a lot of money, Prepare to Die on PC made a lot of money, let's make a Dark Souls 2. Okay, let's make a Scholar of the First Sin, let's make a Dark Souls 3, let's make a Dark Souls Remastered. Okay, just shoving that right in my face, thank you. But also, for me, I know there are a lot of people who enjoy Dark Souls 2 and 3, but for me, I hate Dark Souls 2, I think I've made that clear so far, and I also hate Dark Souls 3, I think that's pretty clear if you've gone through some of my older videos. I still hold those opinions. Sure, the Why Dark Souls 3 PvP Sucks video could have been done a lot better, I'm under no illusion. It could have and should have been done a hell of a lot better. However, I still hold those opinions, and although it is mostly with the PvP. I still have a lot of problems with the PvE, and I prefer to play Dark Souls 1, but then I prefer to play Monster Hunter rather than Dark Souls 1. So you see where I'm going with this? It's like, I don't want to play the other Dark Souls game. I just want to play Dark Souls 1 because I think it's the best. But when I'm playing Dark Souls 1, I'm like, I could be playing Monster Hunter and I could be getting more enjoyment out of Monster Hunter because I prefer it for the reasons that I have previously explained. I don't count Bloodborne in the Souls series, by the way. It's a new IP. I honestly think that From Software are very good at creating new IPs. Demon Souls is a beloved classic by PS3 owners. I've considered many a time getting a PS3 just for Demon Souls, because it is that notoriously good of a game. I know there's a lot of problems with it, but it spawned the Souls series, so I've got to give it props for that. Dark Souls was not a direct sequel and also not necessarily a brand new IP. It was a spiritual successor, and they changed a lot of things from Demon Souls. Enough for me to consider it a new IP, and for me, it was the first Souls game I played, so I mean, I'm gonna fucking love it. And with it being similar to Demon Souls, a lot of the same qualities of the combat and the movement and the mechanics kind of copied over, and considering Demon Souls was a really good game, well, Dark Souls 1 was a really good game as well. Bloodborne, another new IP From Software. I love Bloodborne. I don't play it that much, but I love it. It's a really, really good game. So I'm hoping that Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is going to go down the same path. There's no guarantee, of course, but god damn, I'm really hoping that it's really good, and I'm hoping it'll reinvest me in From Software, because I've lost so much interest in them as a company. It's kind of unbelievable. But I've mostly been playing a lot more Monster Hunter, and for me, the combat in Monster Hunter is a lot more engaging than it is in Dark Souls. And I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing Dark Souls combat, but the combat in Dark Souls is mostly revolved around the R1 button. It's basically one button combat, and the moves that you have are fairly restricted. They expanded it a lot more in Bloodborne, where you had the morph attacks and you could do a lot more interesting things. You had a lot more buttons at your disposal, allowing you to do a lot more combos and just have a lot more interesting moves. But the thing with Monster Hunter is the weapons are designed around you having all of these buttons, and doing them in a certain combination will give you different combos, different results, and you can learn to string them together to make some really interesting plays. You can use your weapon's moveset to your advantage to get in quick or get out, do a few slashes, start doing some impact damage as opposed to slashing damage, I mean blunt damage as opposed to sever. Been playing Warframe a lot as well, so that's kind of bleeding into all this. But it's a lot more about choosing the right move to do as opposed to just getting in and mashing the attack button. Because there are multiple attack buttons, and I am enjoying fighting these ferocious monsters a lot more than I enjoy going through the world of Dark Souls. Again, I've played so much Dark Souls at this point that I know the game back to front. It's basically written on the back of my hand at this point. I don't even need to look at it. I know it. It's all there inside my head. All of the bosses, save for maybe Calamite, I can defeat fairly easily without getting frustrated. So, I still love Dark Souls, but I just don't want to play it. That's pretty much what it is. What I do want to play, though, is more Monster Hunter, as I mentioned. But Nintendo, because greedy, I guess, they've decided, hey, you know what? Other companies are charging for their online services. We can do the same thing as well. Oh, goody, thank you. Yay, now I have to pay to be able to play online. Great, so either I pay to be able to play online, or I just play the single player, which is what I've been doing. I don't want to give Nintendo money for doing this. Well, it's basically a scam, isn't it? Because the internet's already being paid for by the service, or by the internet provider. I shouldn't be having to have a second bill running just to be able to play online with my friends on the internet that, like I said, is already paid for, on the device that I have already paid for, with the video game that I have already paid for. It's very frustrating. But unlike some people, I'm not as passionate about it. Some people are like, man, and that's a response that I would have had if I cared a bit more, because quite frankly, it's there, it's a thing, and I'm not interested. No thanks. I will at some point pay for it because I want to play G rank, and that's online only, or it's in the hub, and I don't really want to do it solo. So at some point I will, but that day is not going to be today, and it's not going to be next month. I might be a thing next year, I don't know. We'll see where we get at, because at the moment I've still got a lot of things that I want to do in Monster Hunter. I've only just fought Nursilla in the village quest, which goes to show how far through the game I am. You know, barely in high rank. I fought the Daimyo Hermitor and he did the grab, which I'd never seen before, so that surprised me. I was like, oh shit, yeah, high rank, that's a thing. And then that allowed me to fight Nursilla, and oh my god, what a cool monster! You will never see this monster in World. I mean, seriously, I do not believe that you will ever see Nursilla in Monster Hunter World. Not to the same extent that it is in Generations Ultimate, because it interacts with the kind of webbed ceilings or the webbed floors that are in some of the 4U stages. It just interacts with them perfectly. It can crawl upside down on them, or it can crawl on the top of them, and it can poke through either side and do really unique attacks. That doesn't exist in World. Well, actually, there are some nets that it maybe it might be able to work, but they're not particularly big areas. I'm thinking of where Anjanath sleeps, but it's such a small location. I find it hard to imagine that they'd be able to pull it off to the same extent. You wouldn't really be able to fight like that in those areas because they're so small. It'd be so restricting, and some arenas are restricting, but I feel like that's more reserved for like the final fight of a monster where it's gone to sleep. It's more of a nesting area than a regular roaming area, if you get what I mean. But fighting Nursilla for the first time, I forgot to bring antidotes. You know, I was like, alright, let's fight Nursilla. Alright, begin hunt. Loading screen. Wait. Nursilla uses poison. Shit, forgot to bring antidotes. Whoops. So I go over to fight Nursilla, and I end up getting pinned in a corner. And it's trying to go for my Palico, and it does the poison bite. That thing is just so creepy. If you don't know, Nursilla is a giant spider. It's got these purple crystals kind of growing out of its back or its abdomen, and its bite attack, it has like these, I don't even know what you'd call them, like hacksaws length kind of what would you call them? Biters, little nibbly things. But they shoot out of its mouth, and you get this horrible cracking sound like it's snapping its neck or something to be able to do this. And it brings one out, and then it snaps the other out, and then it goes for the bite. It managed to just barely clip me with that as I was getting back up. And then as I was trying to run away, again, it was going for my Palico, but then it hit me with its stinger, which causes sleep. So at this point, I'm poisoned and I'm falling asleep, and I'm at 10% health with no energy drinks and no antidotes. I carted. There was no hope for me. None whatsoever. I was thinking maybe one of my Palicos could save me, and maybe I could neck down a mega potion or something just before I die. No. There you go. Back to camp you go. Oh god. And the way it moves. I'm not arachnophobic, thankfully. I might get a little bit of a jump if there's a spider on a wall and I didn't notice it before. I'm gonna go, oh, there's a spider there, and then I'll calm down and be, it's just a spider. You know, I don't live in Australia where it's like is that a spider that could kill me? Is that something I have to worry about? Or is it okay? You know, it's Britain. There's no venomous spiders as far as I'm aware. I mean, the scariest thing we have to worry about is adders, which have very slow poison or venom, and they are very rare and not very aggressive. So, you know. So the way Nasilla moves, it freaks me out. Even though I'm not arachnophobic, and normally spiders in video games do not freak me out, but the way Nasilla moves, it's so sinister with the 8 legs, and especially when it's crawling on the ceiling. Oh my god. The worst part was when I got clipped by its stinger again, its sleep stinger. So I was falling asleep and I was trying to get away from it. I was trying to like jump out of the zone at the last second. Didn't quite get there, but it tried to do its bite attack, so it wound up, kind of snapped its jaws out and then went for the bite and barely missed me as I collapse, fall onto the ground, and then it walks over to me. It just sort of stands there, just kind of contemplating, what should I do? What should I do? Like webbing kind of coming from its mouth, like, ooh, I could do anything to this little sleepy one. What should we do? I know. Winds up the bite attack again. Snap, snap. I'm starting to get up. Get out of there, mashing the B button. Roll, 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 roll. Swipe. Manages to clip me with the poison bite again. Oh, God. I did manage to take it out on my first try, but man, this is one of the things that I've been noticing more and more with Monster Hunter, is that just because you manage to defeat a monster on your first go, like it doesn't cause you to fail, just because it doesn't cause you to fail the quest does not mean it's an interesting fight. Nasilla is a great example of this. It's a freaking spider! There are no spiders in World! And I'm getting on the Generations Ultimate versus World comparison, because my friend came over and I was showing him Generations Ultimate. He's like, oh, what? They got loading between zones? Oh, that's lame. It wasn't quite as, how should I say, exaggerated as that, but those were, they were words to that effect of like, man, they're using loading between zones, that's lame. And I was just thinking, like, well, this game, first of all, it came out before World. Second of all, it's on a Switch and not a PS4, which I don't know exactly what the power of the Switch is comparable to the PS4. I wouldn't be surprised if the Switch is actually more powerful than the PS4, considering how shit that thing is. But also, it's using the same engine as they've been using for the last 10 years or so, and it's meant to be an anniversary-style game, so of course it's going to be in the same style as all of the older games. On top of that, I'm happy to take loading between zones in favor of monster diversity. You know, being able to take on stuff like Celtus and Nasilla and the Daimyo Hermitor, they don't exist in World. They just don't. These things are so interesting to fight. I'm really looking forward to fighting Celtus Queen. They fight in completely different ways than you fought anything in World. For starters, they don't have any fucking hip checks, thank God. But also in their movement, you know, the Daimyo Hermitor and the Shogun Senator, they walk sideways. Nasilla did that a little bit as well. And Nasilla especially is a lot more focused on status effects with the poison and the sleep than it is on standard attacks and the webbing, of course, as well. So you have so much more monster variety, and it's a little bit disappointing when you go from Generations Ultimate with its 97 monsters with a shit ton of different monster archetypes or skeletons, so to speak, and then you go to World where you've got lizards, you got like the brute wyverns, you've got the fanged wyverns like Odogaron and Tobikadachi, you've got the flying wyverns, you got 2 bird wyverns, you got 2 fish, and you got another form of fanged wyvern, the Dodogama and Great Gyros sort of thing. And that's about it, apart from Elder Dragons. You know? So it's a little bit disappointing when you look at the variety between World and Generations Ultimate. And I don't mean to get on that train, but it does come up every now and again with me and my friends when it's like, should I get Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate or should I get World? And I don't know. I really don't know. But I know which one I'm going to be playing for a lot longer. It's the one with more content. I've also started experimenting a lot more with different weapons in Generations Ultimate. I've started using a bit more hunting horn, and I finally got a full bow set off of the Baroth, and I've been wanting to try and get the Strange set, which is the base Deviant set, to use as a hunting horn set, because it's got Horn Maestro and Part Breaker on it. Unfortunately, I need some Red Helm Arzuros, like Rage Fur, I think it is, which I'm pretty sure you get by breaking the Red Helm's head, and that's why I got the bow, because I was like, hey, he's generally standing up a lot, so if I can hit him in the face with the bow, maybe I could break his face and I could get some Rage Fur, because as of right now, I don't have any of that stuff. But then the Nintendo Online thing happened, and I was like, do you know what, I'll just do some village quests. Still need to hunt a low-rank Shigura Magala to upgrade one of my insect glaives. And speaking of which, I really wanted to get the Nasilla armor set, but I'm not sure if I'm going to. It looks really cool. It has Constitution, Status, and minus stun. The full set gives you double stun. I'm not a big fan of getting stunned. I won't always build to resist stun. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. But having negative stun or double stun, I don't think I like that. So unfortunately, I'm thinking of skipping out on the Nasilla set. As awesome as it looks, I don't think I'll pick it up. Maybe it makes for a great gunner set or a great bow set. I don't know. I could try it out, give me an excuse to fight more Nasilla, because I do want to fight more Nasilla. It's just I don't have a lot of reasons, because all of the weapons are sleep weapons, and I'm not a big fan of sleep weapons unless I'm running a full sleep bombing set like I did in World one time anyway. But if I'm just by myself and I'm using a sword and shield, I generally won't want to put sleep on that sword and shield, because I'll put it to sleep, and me being a lazy bastard, I won't have any mega barrel bombs with me, so I'll just end up using the strongest move that I have available to me, which won't be particularly powerful, and I don't know, I feel like I get more use out of paralysis or poison in that case, because you can apply it to them more, and I feel like I could just get more damage output with them if I'm not using mega barrel bombs. And as far as I'm aware, the go-to sleep weapons are the Plesioth weapons, not the Nasilla weapons, which makes me a little bit sad, because again, the Nasilla weapons look so goddamn good. I might pick up the bow though. The bow looks pretty decent. It's got decent damage. It's got 2 slots, 20% affinity, and sleep plus along with poison coatings. So that might be a perfectly good bow for me to pick up and start using. I've currently been using the Cornu Pinion, the one that you get from Toxic Kumoris, and that's been serving me really, really well, just as a starter bow weapon. Bow is a weapon. Nice one. But relatively speaking, I haven't been playing too much Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. I've mostly been playing a shite ton of Warframe. I've managed to get a lot of stuff done in the past month. But I have played a little bit of Divinity Original Sin 2, the Definitive Edition, because that finally came out, and I already had the base game on GOG. I'm tempted to try and convince one of my friends on PS4 to get it as well, so maybe we could do like a co-op campaign, but I'm not really sure if it's going to be worth the price, because it is a fantastic game, but I'd be buying it twice at that point, and I'm not sure if I can fork over the cash for that. I'd love to, but not sure if I can. But Divinity Original Sin 2 is such a goddamn good game. My friend says he likes to call it the video game version of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, you take Dungeons and Dragons and then you put it into a video game and you get Divinity Original Sin 2, because it's got all these really cool dialogue lines. You've got all of these skills that allow you to do things in and out of combat. Some of them are more useful in combat, some of them are more useful outside of combat. For example, Pet Pal, allowing you to talk to animals, really useful outside of combat, hasn't got much use in combat, but that is one of those skills that you look at, being able to talk to animals, and that's it's probably not all that amazing, is it? But actually, you get some amazing dialogue from some of the animal NPCs, and it opens up a lot of quests. It gives you so much information about the world that you're in and how best to try and progress through said world. Like, they might tip you off as to there's this path, there's this hidden path that you can go through that'll make your progression a little bit easier, or they'll give you a quest, like if you can maybe like free one of their friends, then they'll try and help you out in some way, shape, or form. It's all very, very interesting, because most people, I can imagine, not taking Pet Pal. They want to go for something a bit more useful, but then you miss out on so many quests, so many interesting NPC interactions. And then in combat, it's kind of turn-based, kind of similar to XCOM. If you've played that, then you'll be familiar with the how you move characters, costing action points for how many spaces you move, and then certain actions cost more action points. Or every turn you get a set of action points, and you can do with that what you will. You could do 2 attacks, or you could do a lot of movement, or you could do some movement and then an attack, or an attack and then some movement. Whatever you do, it's all currency based with these action points. Or you can save them, and the next turn you'll have a lot more action points, which is quite nice. But one of the more interesting things with the magic system in Divinity Original Sin 2 is you can kind of combine elements. If you put oil down, you can ignite that. If you put poison down, you can ignite that. Or you can electrify the poison. Or if somebody bleeds because they got stabbed, so blood goes on the floor, you can electrify that. Or you can freeze it. And that's just, like, you stab someone, so they bleed, and then you electrify their blood. It's just one of those interactions that most developers won't think about. They'll think about, if there's oil, you can set that on fire, sure. But they won't think about, like, someone gets stabbed, so blood goes on the floor, creates a pool of blood, and then you can use that to your advantage as well. It's like, what? And then you can end up, like, evaporating water, or using a water spell to cool off fire, and it creates a steam cloud, and then you can electrify the cloud, or you can poison the cloud. Or you can use the cloud to your advantage to block line of sight from certain enemies, kind of hide inside of it. There's just all sorts of really creative things you can do, and that's where the Dungeons and Dragons sort of thing comes in, because you can get really creative with that as well, because it is, after all, it's essentially a game of pretend, isn't it? Dungeons and Dragons, just with a few more rules and bit more cohesion to the whole thing, because it's all organised. It's an organised game of pretend. But aside from Divinity Original Sin, yeah, Warframe. Lots and lots and lots of Warframe. I've got the Warframe bug again. I can't help it. I keep going back to Warframe. I keep thinking I'm done with Warframe and I'll never touch it again, but then I keep going back. I cannot help it. It is one of those games that I will forever return to, you know? It's like a childhood favourite, almost. Except I played it in, when did it come out on PS4? Like 2013? Late 2013? Yeah. I've been playing it since then, and it has been... Whenever I think about how, like, the state that it released in 2013 on PS4, and I think of where it is now, it's unbelievable. If you've recently picked up Warframe, or you've never played it, this is going to be a bit of an abstract concept, because I'm going to start talking about what it used to be. But I can't help it. I have to talk about this. When I played Warframe back in 2013, I mean, I remember when you couldn't hold out your melee weapon as a primary. You know how you hold the swap weapon button and then you pull out your sword and use that as your primary weapon. You can like block bullets and parry enemies and do these cool combos and stuff. Didn't used to always be able to do that. That got introduced, I don't even know when, maybe a year after it came out on PS4. I remember when Earth didn't even have its own tile set. You know, the lush forests of Earth? That didn't exist back when I first started playing. Same goes, well, obviously Plains Eidolon is quite a recent addition. It's about a year old, so that hasn't always been here. But it's just kind of bizarre to think about. Yeah, no Eidolons. There was no operator mode. Nothing like that. The War Within, pre-War Within, pre-Second Dream, pre-Natar, pre-Uranus tile set. The Underwater Sea Lab, that didn't exist. Good lord. I remember when Ceres was like one of the end planets. Ceres housed Keeler de Thame as opposed to Sedna. I remember when Pluto was the end of the star chart. That was it. You didn't go into the void. The void was its own thing. You didn't just go there whenever you wanted to. You had to use these keys, and now we've got relics, which are honestly a lot better than void keys. Good lord. So many changes. Man. It's just insane. No focus. No Kubros, no Kavats. We didn't have any pets. It was just Sentinels. You just had Sentinels. That was the thing, you know? Good lord. What are these Kubros and Kavats? Get out of here. Nah, Kubros and Kavats are awesome. But they didn't exist. Kubros came out with Mirage, which came out after Wildlife had been introduced to the Earth tile set, namely Wild Kubros. So it was like the Wild Kubros came out, and then the Howl of the Kubro update with Mirage and being able to use Kubros as pets came out. I remember when, your health bar and your shield and your energy and all of your abilities, as well as your Warframe's icon, for some reason, a name, an affinity, all of that was stowed away in the top right hand corner of the screen in this ugly little box that had kind of this Audacity wavelength kind of effect around the box. It looked hideous. Stamina was in that bar. You had stamina. That used to be a thing. You'd sprint and it would drain stamina. So the thing was, you would sprint for a bit and then you'd slide, because sliding recovered your stamina. And then coptering, like before being able to bullet jump, the whole thing was you would take a weapon that had a lot of attack speed and a lot of momentum, and you would sprint, you would slide, and then you'd hit the quick melee button and you'd do that spin attack, except it would send you flying. It would catapult you to the other side of the tile set. Or you'd like jump up, aim up, and do the melee attack. That's how you got to hard to reach places. You didn't bullet jump, you freaking coptered, as it was called. Bloody hell. I'm glad they got rid of that, though, because it really restricted the sort of melee weapons that you'd run with. If you wanted a good melee weapon, like the Sindo Prime, you'd have to sacrifice your mobility, which really sucked. It was pretty much just using pole arms like the Orthos Prime. The main one was the Thibodeau. I remember that being like, this is the go-to coptering weapon. It was ridiculous. Oh, boy. Warframe has come such a long way from when I joined when Valkyria came out. Now we have Valkyria Prime. Look at that. An Oberon Prime, Chroma Prime. Good lord. When did Chroma first come out? That was a long time ago. Unbelievable. Really is. It's absolutely amazing to see where it's come, because now we actually have good focus. I would say it's good focus. We have a good focus farm. That didn't exist for a really long time. Well, they got rid of raids, which is a little bit sad, but we've got arcanes on the Eidolons, which we can farm quite nicely. We've got the Plains of Eidolon, and soon we'll have Fortuna. Well, I say soon TM. Soon, whenever they can end up getting it out. You can't spell delay without DE, am I right? You know. But it's all good because I got so much stuff to try and acquire in Warframe that the current content drought isn't affecting me whatsoever. I know there is currently a content drought in Warframe where people who have done everything already, they haven't really got a lot of reasons to play. You know, they'll be Mastery rank 25 and they'll log in to farm up Chroma Prime, get the Rubico Prime and Gram Prime, and they'll get those to level 30, they'll form them a couple of times maybe, and then they'll have nothing to do again other than logging in every day to maybe do a sortie and hopefully get lucky with a Riven. They've kind of run out of things to do, whereas me, I'm like, man, I haven't even fully upgraded all of my rank 10 mods yet. I still have Serration and Hornet Strike, and now I've got these Umbral mods because I finally did the sacrifice, and holy shit, what a quest. It's still running through my mind. I did that a couple of weeks ago. I ended up playing until midnight. I was just so invested in the quest, like, I gotta keep playing. This is so interesting, because the last time we had a quest kind of similar to that, for me at least, was the War Within. God, I remember the Wait Within. I think that quest got delayed by like a year, and when it came out it was bugged and quite underwhelming. If you having to wait for a year for the War Within, or rather it was announced for a certain date and then it came out a year after that date because it got delayed so much. So having to wait for a year for the War Within to come out when it was supposed to, after it was supposed to be out, is kind of a disappointment. But if you play it in its current state where, you know, you're still going through the game and you're not having to wait on the newest quest to come out, then it's really interesting, it's really engaging. I've still got lots of things to do, but why don't we talk about the sacrifice? I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to try and stay as spoiler free as possible. There are just a few things that I want to talk about because I really, really enjoyed it. I was really invested. There were a lot of story beats that, as a long-time Warframe fan, I've been interested in the story and I've thought, ooh, what about this? And this is how this works. And then playing through the sacrifice, they're like, this is how this works. And I'm like, fucking cooled it. Already knew that. So it was really nice to get confirmation on a lot of this stuff. But now that on PS4, I had to wait for Natar. I had to wait for the Second Dream. I had to wait for the War Within. And then I didn't end up playing the sacrifice. On PC, however, I was able to play through all of those quests within my own time because they were already out. I didn't have to wait for the next story beat, so I wasn't wanting it to be the best thing on the planet, if that makes any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Of course I wanted it to be the best thing on the planet. Why wouldn't I? I didn't have stupidly high expectations. I wasn't on edge waiting for this thing to come out for months. You know, it was there, it was available, it was accessible, I could do it at my leisure. So being able to run through those quests and see how the operator as a character kind of progresses, it's really nice to see where they are now after the sacrifice from where they were in the Second Dream and what they became in the War Within. A lot of people really didn't like how the operator became in the War Within, but I feel, as much as I didn't really like it, I feel a lot better about the operator now that I've played the sacrifice. I feel pretty content in that. And same thing goes for Ordis, you know. I mentioned in the last podcast that when I played Octavia's Anthem, I had a newfound respect for Ordis, and now after playing the sacrifice, I think I freaking love Ordis. I went from someone who absolutely despised Ordis before I played Octavia's Anthem and the sacrifice to now I've completely 180'd. I freaking love Ordis. He is so cool. He just does so much for the operator. Just wants to help. Ah, what a cool character. But of course I didn't know how to actually activate the sacrifice, so that was a little bit interesting. I was like, it would make sense if you had to do the Chains of Harrow, because I knew what the Chains of Harrow quest involved. I knew the story beats, I just hadn't played it. So I was thinking it would make sense if you had to do the Chains of Harrow in order to trigger the sacrifice, but I'll look it up on the Warframe wiki just in case. Look it up. Oh, and immediate spoilers. Thanks. And then I figure out, go into it a bit more, and it's like, oh yeah, it was the Chains of Harrow. I should have just played the Chains of Harrow. What was I thinking? I just wanted to get the sacrifice done. I didn't want to bother doing the Chains of Harrow if it wasn't going to lead to the sacrifice, if you know what I mean. So, lesson learned with that. I don't think I'm going to be going to the Warframe wiki for information on a quest ever again. Immediate spoilers. Ooh, thanks. But after the sacrifice, I am now Master Rank 14, and I'm just trying to power up my stuff. I have some decent equipment. I have the Bratton Prime that is nearly a complete build. I have the Piranha Prime, which I've managed to acquire. Piranha used to be my favorite secondary in Warframe, even though I had a really bad build on it and it was really inefficient. I still really loved it. So to get the Piranha Prime, it has been an absolute ball using the Piranha Prime. And so I'm trying to put together a good build for that. I got a decent build on Vakor's Sidon and the War. I'd like to get a couple more melee weapons, such as the Course Assist, and maybe Galatine Prime or Grand Prime. I'm not really too sure. I've seen what the Grand Prime's gimmick is, like being able to ragdoll enemies with the Grand Slam. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't like ragdolls in my Warframe. I like to be able to shoot my enemies, so if they're flying across the screen, that's going to make it a little bit more difficult to do so. So maybe I will just go for the Galatine Prime, because it is a pretty damn cool sword. By the way, I've got some really good weapons, and I'm just putting together some builds for them. I've got a Kavat that I'm trying to power up, but I still need a crap ton of mods. There are so many mods that I'm missing. I'm missing all, not all, I'm missing most of the 120% IPS mods, the Impact, Puncture, and Slash. I'm missing all of the electric dual stat mods. I finally managed to get Scorch off after running Kappa on Sedna like 100 times. Finally fucking got Scorch, so now I've got all of those dual stat mods, apart from the electric ones, because Barrow won't decide to show up with them. I haven't got any primed mods whatsoever. I haven't got any corrupted mods, and I think I'm missing some nightmare mods. I'm also missing barrel diffusion because the fucking Grushdrag 3 won't drop them. I've fought the Grushdrag 3 a number of times. I've almost got the full Brack, in fact, but they just won't drop fucking barrel diffusion. It's so aggravating. And I'd also quite like to get Condition Overload, but that's like a 0.02% drop chance on an enemy that only exists on a singular tile set, the Uranus C-Lab tile set to be specific. And there's not really a high level tile set for that. It's all Uranus, you know, which is very frustrating. So I'll probably never see that outside of a trade. Again, it all goes to show that I still have a metric fuck ton of things to do in Warframe, even though I have been playing it pretty solidly for the past month and a bit. Like I said, I can't stop. It's too much goddamn fun trying to level up my Syndicate rep and doing Sanctuary Onslaught to see if we can't farm Cora, because that's going to be fun. Gonna have to farm Nidus and Harrow systems from the defect missions, which is going to be even more fun, and lots of other things to acquire. I've decided at this point that I am going to get some Prime Warframes. Initially, I didn't want to get any Prime Warframes at all. No, I don't need Prime Warframes. All it does is it means I have to put a Reactor, Exilus, and a lot of Former into 2 Warframes, potentially. And I just can't be bothered to do that, so I'll just take the regular Warframe, and then we'll worry about the Prime Warframe when I don't have anything else to worry about. It'll be one of those things I'll bother with once I hit Mastery Rank 20. Maybe. If I've got all of the other things that I want to get, that is, which I probably won't. But there are some Warframes that are very annoying to get outside of their primes. For example, if I want to get Limbo, I have to do the Limbo Theorem quest, and I don't give a shit about Arcwing, especially Arcwing Intercept. No thanks. I think I'll farm Limbo Prime. It'd make it so much easier to get him, and I don't have to worry about the Limbo Theorem quest. And same goes for any clan Warframe, or any Warframe that requires clan research, because I still haven't decided if I'm going to join a clan or make my own clan. I think I'm going to join a clan, but again, it's one of those things where I'll worry about that after I've gotten to like Mastery Rank 20 or something stupid like that. So if I want to get Chroma or Volt, Zephyr, Banshee, I'm going to have to get their primes. And if I get their primes first, then getting their regulars isn't too bad, because I'm not going to use their regulars if I already have the primes, right? At least that's the idea. I wanted to get the regular frames first, partially for collective reasons and mastery rank, but also to kind of prove that you don't need prime versions of Warframes to be viable. Because a lot of people, I feel, think or are under the illusion that you have to have the prime version of a Warframe. Like, using the regular version of a Warframe is inferior to using these prime version of the same Warframe. And although they do give some bonus stats, it's usually not that big of a deal. There are some exceptions, such as Nova Prime having the highest energy pool in the entire game, and Chroma Prime having some additional armor, which will beef him up a hell of a lot with Vex armor. But for the most part, it's not too important. Again, I will worry about Prime Warframes one day. I'll try and get all of the Prime Warframes, but as of right now, I'm just going to stick with regular frames or Prime Warframes if getting the regular versions is just too much of a pain in the ass for me. In other words, is it locked behind clan research? In which case, yes, I'll go for the Prime Warframes. I think that's going to be it for this podcast. If you have any questions or any topics that you want me to cover in the future, leave them in the comments below. I'm going to start making notes of the things that I want to talk about in these podcasts, so they're a bit more structured, they're a little bit more professional, and maybe, well, hopefully a lot more entertaining, as opposed to me rambling and kind of trying to think of what I'm going to talk about on the spot. I feel like that's not a great way of doing this format for a podcast. The general format is to do channel update and maybe some comment responding in the first part, then talk about Monster Hunter, and then talk about some other games I've been playing, or maybe a larger topic that I want to tackle, something specific, like maybe graphics versus gameplay or something like that, or difficulty, and then I'll talk about Warframe and probably just end it off with that. Should have put this at the beginning of the podcast as opposed to the end, but that's just my poor decision making skills shining as always right there. Let me know what you think. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.